Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz. Continuing on with our team-by-team series, we've got the Gold Coast Suns up again today. Special guest, Gold Coast supporter, Chris. How are you, mate?
Very well, thanks, Swizz. Always looking forward to talking Gold Coast Suns, whether it's February, October, July, anytime.
Oh, mate, that's very good. And I have said it before, I've got a bit of a soft spot for the Suns. It's hard not to as a Richmond supporter. We've probably stolen a few of your players over the years, and you've returned the favour by taking Daniel off us now. So it'll be interesting. I'll be obviously watching Daniel very closely. But yeah, you have had a lot of relevant players for quite a number of years, and now also with Dimmer in his second year, it could be a really good year for the Suns coming up.
Well, look, at some stage it's got to be, doesn't it, Swizz? I mean, the only team in the AFL not to make finals, and the excuses, to be honest, are starting to wear a bit thin for supporters. And I think rightly so. I've been there for an awfully long time, and we're getting a bit tired of honourable losses, an 8-14, 9-13 sort of season. At some stage, I think the wheel's got to turn. And now that Dimmer's had his chance to drill his game style in for 12 months, get the players all on the same page, work out who's supposed to be there and who's not, the excuses this year would be negligible, I think, for not making the finals.
100%, mate. And before we get into exploring that a bit further, I need to do the obviously intro. As always, keep finding us out on YouTube and Spotify. Get in contact with us via X, Supercoach Insider 100, or Swizz26 for me directly. So, Chris, mate, yes, the Suns, as you said, no real excuses this year. Expectations, I guess, for you would minimum be finals, and then I guess anything after that would be slightly a bonus. Am I on the money there?
I'll tell you what, as a South Australian Gold Coast Suns fan, Swizz, my expectation is that we actually win a game here in South Australia. We've won one match for premiership points in Adelaide, right back when we rolled Port in that first win. So as a long-suffering fan, 13-year member, if we can just win once here in Adelaide, that'll do me for the moment. Finals after that would be an absolute bonus.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point, because I think it was Port Adelaide in that first year where you knocked those guys off, and it's a pretty good comeback by memory. I feel like I was up in Albury watching that, and it was a great win. But since then, as you said, the chocolates have been going to the South Australian side, so that does make it difficult. I did have Supercoach Ant on for the first Suns discussion, and him being in Perth, it's been quite similar. It's sort of starting to turn just because of West Coast performance these days. But it's obviously hard being an interstate supporter sometimes when your team's not so good on the road.
Oh, and look, we've had plenty of opportunities too as well. I mean, even back in the COVID season, we're still playing Hawthorn here on home turf and gave ourselves half a chance. But that was another predictable one. This year it's North Melbourne for Gather Round, but it's up at Lyndoch, which isn't exactly known as an AFL venue. So as far as I'm concerned, that's still 50-50, because we know, without stealing thunder from your Rose podcast, that they won't be worse this season.
Yeah, well, I'm still hopeful that they will be, because Richmond's got their pick. But I feel like every team improves. So I have this argument with North Melbourne supporters, Suns, every team, where the expectation is the club's going to improve. Outside of probably Richmond, there's not too many other supporters coming on here saying, well, worst case scenario. I probably had a couple of Adelaide supporters saying this could potentially happen and we could fall off if this happened. But most people, obviously, at this time of year, are pretty optimistic about their team's chances. I feel like the competition's now so close. Those close games, it's always going to take an injury here or a couple of mistakes at crucial times, and a team's going to get important wins over another team we're probably going to see a bit of a logjam again, and that's kind of how I feel. So the Suns pretty good at home last year, but definitely need to start winning some of those games on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, particularly with Dimmer now having 12 months to get that game style down pat, this is when you really do start to see the whips cracking. The list is in a sweet spot. There's a number of players now in their 4th, 5th, 6th seasons. So right now is the absolute time that we should be expecting finals, not hoping for it.
Yeah, and that's where I've been big on, say, your Caleb Sarong, say, for Fremantle, because it's 24 years old, you're 100 games into your career. It's the sweet spot for particularly your midfielders. Your ruckman's slightly older than that, but you're definitely your midfielders, and that's where this core group of Suns players, and we'll go through that list in a moment, but your Rouse, your Andersons, and then well supported. Obviously, a little bit more aging with Miller, but Flanders is coming along. So there is that core group who's just ready to strike, and I can understand why Suns supporters would be a bit optimistic, thinking this should be the year that we should definitely be not even challenging for the 8, it's making the 8.
Making the 8, winning a final, that's got to be the minimum expectation, I think. And that's certainly what the board would be expecting. That's what Dimmer would have been expecting. And that's what the playing list should really now be expecting. No more honourable losses against a team comparable on the ladder. It's time to start knocking off the top teams and on the road too.
100%. Well, we'll go through that team. So, yeah, I've still got, it's pretty, actually, what you can tell by the blue, it's similar to what I had last time. Mac Andrew Collins, Ulan, Rioli, struggling a little bit with an injury still with that ankle, but I think they still think he should get up by the end of the preseason. Maybe misses round 0, but and if he probably misses round 0, he probably misses round 1, and then they bring him in after the bye. So it might not be the world's worst thing. There is a few halfbacks who have been performing pretty well in the preseason, as you can see by Nerds. His training notes, as always, Ballard and Noble, who's obviously come in from Collingwood, Will Powell, Took and Closley. Flanders are still on the half-forward line. Walter misses the round 0 match back after suspension in round 1. So this is a round 1 lineup because that's Supercoach relevant. So he will obviously miss 1 game. Humphrey, Long, King and Ainsworth, Witts, Rowell and Anderson. And then I've brought Buderick into the team. He's been really good again pre-season, training in that back line. Lombard, the new high recruit that's come in there from the academy. Rogers and Weller. I think Ethan Reid, the ruckman, was the one that dropped out for me. And I've added in a young, well, I can't say young Jepson, but the new sign-on, because he's not young. He's actually mature age. And just the fact he's mature age and potentially with, say somebody like a Flanders could be missing. It's probably the perfect replacement. He's been doing everything really well since being signed on. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he comes in. Probably a good sub candidate just because he can fill a couple of roles there. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's at the very least in the emergency for the round 0s. Thoughts, mate?
I can't argue too much with that lineup Swizz at all. That's very much what I would expect to see. The bench is always going to shuffle a little bit along the way. And I guess one thing to keep in mind too, now that Sam Day's crossed over to Brisbane, that leaves them a little bit short on a genuine second ruck option. So I do wonder if we'll see Ned Moyle coming into the lineup more often, possibly resting in that pocket, just to take some of the pressure off Big Witsy, who's been absolutely outstanding for so long. But we did see him get rotated out a few times last season. I reckon Ned will seize the opportunity to grab his chance, and we might see a bit more game time from him. So if you're looking at a ruck option on the bench and you want to be one of the 5 coaches that doesn't have Harry Boyd as your ruckman on the bench at the moment, then Ned Moyle, I think, would be an absolute huge chance there to be getting 80s or 90s for you at the very least.
Yeah, that would be obviously a different watch. Just his price compared to last year. I think he's about $460K, which is going to be the obvious issue. But if Witsy is the one, if he goes down long term, Moyle, is definitely a good shout. Yes, it did show some good form in those 8 games. The hard thing is you obviously do have Ethan Reid. I think you brought Max Noble as well as a bit of backup too in case something goes wrong. That's going to obviously help. Elliot Himmelberg's another one that could come in and play a role, especially in that round 0 team if with Walter being out. So some of these players who have been playing. Like you look at Tom Berry, for example, he's a good one in there, 17 games last year. No disrespect to Tom. He was not a bad little Supercoach option last year for us. But they're the sort of players that you kind of want back in the VFL, pushing the others to keep their spot more than actually making the top 18 each week.
Yeah, Himmelberg's interesting, isn't he? I mentioned off air that I call the SANFL here in Adelaide. I'm about to start my 21st season calling the SANFL here, so I've seen a lot of Elliot Himmelberg over a number of years. All-time leading goal kicker for Adelaide's SANFL team, which probably tells you how few opportunities he's had at AFL level, and when he has had them, possibly hasn't grasped them. Now, we know that most players do really make a point in that first season or thereabouts, but when I look at that lineup, I'm not seeing an immediate spot for Himmelberg, so I think he's going to have to absolutely tear the door down at VFL level.
I think he's interesting. He definitely probably plays round 1 with Walter being out. Could be that second ruck that we're talking about. As you say, well, Himmelberg at 200 centimetres. Could definitely come in and probably pinch hit for Witts as well. So one to kind of watch. I don't think it's more, maybe because of the 292K, a good Supercoach point of view. but he's from a draft point of view, might be just a sneaky one to just kind of watch if you're in a deeper draft with extra forwards.
Oh, look, quite agree. You're right there. He's at a very awkward price for Supercoach standards. He's one of those ones that you're not quite game to take a punt on, I think, because you can take a decent rookie at 190, 200 that you know will see game time along the way. And you might have Elliott, he might play 15 games, he might play 20 in the VFL. It's a really hard one to say. And he's one, to be honest, I'd be sitting on probably for a little while, and at least for those first 4 or 5 rounds, and seeing how they're going to manage Moyle, Witts, Walter, and as you mentioned, Reid to a certain degree in that same attack.
Yeah, the players of interest, like at the moment, the most owned player is Flanders at 18%. Now, a lot of the other Suns players aren't highly owned because they do have that awkward round 2 bye. I still think there's a world where you can potentially have 1 or 2, as long as they're not obviously in the same lines, because it's easy to cover, especially easy to cover the more rookie players. But there are a couple of premiums that people are looking at. For the 18% with Flanders, I would just completely take him out for now. I'd want to see the fact that he'd be back playing strong. But at the moment, that's not the case at all. So, yeah, I'd be leaving him. But in regards to, if we go just the rookie players at the moment, Lombard, in particular at 167K, has looked good at training, fitted in. He obviously, being an academy player, already knows the program. Is that somebody that we should be looking at a little bit more closely than the 9% ownership currently?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a really good bench option for you at the moment, and he will see some game time. You mentioned he's familiar with the players, familiar with the game plan, would slot in fairly seamlessly there. And I can see him the sort that Dimmer does run off the bench, and you'll make cash pretty quickly at 167 for him, particularly,
So many people are going, your Langfords, your Sardises, I guess Ashcroft, as the more popular choices. But you've got this guy here who has been part of the system for quite a while. Definitely got a lot of talent about him, and he seemed to fit in pretty seamlessly through the preseason. So at 167K, I think you could do worse than having him at your M8.
The other 2 that really intrigue me are the 2 recruits that you've got at halfback, Rioli and Noble. Now, you'd suspect one of them will take the kick-ins. Depends on which one of them actually does, because you're going to rack up a fair few points doing that, particularly if Flanders isn't there early. But then you have that decision, are they going to be essentially kicking it to each other, one from the goal square, one across halfback there? And I guess it comes down to working out which one of them might see more time kicking in from fullback. Sammy Collins does on occasion. I don't see Mac Andrew taking too many kick-ins, and I'd be very surprised if Hewlin did as well. I think it'll be one of the 2 new recruits. So if you can work out early which one's getting the more time, that's a very good way of looking for a 90, 100-plus defender.
Yeah, I feel like Rioli's a little bit more, again, draft relevant. If he probably didn't have the early injury, it might be one that we can monitor and potentially be an upgrade as we go on. It's going to, again, be hard to start him, but definitely somebody, if he has that role, he has done it at Richmond. He did it. He was the second most, I think, kick-ins last year. So if he was to, Dimmer's obviously brought him up for a reason. He's been a massive fan of him since day one. That move to halfback has really reunited his career from back when he was a forward pocket for us. So, I think, from kick-ins or be the run and carry guy off halfback, Daniel definitely does have a lot more scope in there, now being pretty well the number 1 guy, not sharing it with, say, a Jaden Short like he was at Richmond. And Noble, I think, he's obviously going to play well. We saw Irland last year score some big points, so there's no reason why Noble couldn't come in. They've obviously targeted him. He's going to enjoy the fact that he's going to be a best 18 player. And, there's definitely going to be some upside to him.
The big bonus too, we've got Mac Andrew sitting there in the back pocket. Well, we know that Mac, and as you would know better than many, can kick goals after the siren and sink teams as well. And we know that he can also go into the ruck as well and play that pinch hitting role. So he's a very attractive price for one of the few genuine utilities in the league. We know he can go down back. We know he can go up forward. We know he can go on the ball. He's one of those players that could potentially pull out a 110 or a 120 from absolutely nowhere some weeks. You've also then got to wear the 60s and 70s other weeks. But Mac Andrew, I think, is one that most teams should be having a very close look at because of that versatility.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, I feel like it's more the draft relevance for Mac, but I feel like there's one of these Suns players is going to push up and be knocking on that top 10. So, Mac Andrew, at least as you said, that versatility does get him forward. If he was the depending on sort of him and Ballard, who's taking the more intercept marks, there's always sort of one player who's playing as that third defender. We've seen players like Sicily do it in the past. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Sicily doing it, but we do know that third defender who is zoning off and coming across to take those marks usually has the uptick in scoring. And Mac Andrew is obviously a very athletic player who can do that. And then, as you said, can move forward when the game's on the line, which is just huge in Supercoach. The two that we really do need to move on and discuss at length are the two guns in the midfield. We got Matty Rowell, who's teased us at starts of seasons for the last couple of years and has just run out of gas as the season's rolled on. Out of contract, being pursued by Geelong, probably being pursued by half the competition. He's going to be. I always think these out of contract years, and when you're getting chased, is your career year. The Suns are going to obviously be doing everything to keep him, but as much as Dimmer said, he probably might spend a little bit more time on the ground instead of going to the bench, resting forward, which is good. I don't think it's just a case of he's going to lose midfield time. It's just less time on the bench and a little bit more time on ground. And then Noah Anderson, who might be the best player at home and one of the worst players away. His differential between home and away form was something to be really head-scratching last year. So if he can find a way that he can recreate the away trips to make him feel like home, he could definitely be one. And I know, talking to a few other content creators, that he's one that they are looking at starting him as that sort of guy who, he's going to miss round 2, but it's just because they feel like the upside is huge with Noah. What are your thoughts on the two main boys at the Suns?
Yeah, I'm prepared to wear as a lower score in round 2 because I've got them both in my lineup for very similar reasons too. Now, Noz is not going to be able to afford to have that great home form, poor away form now that he's been handed the captaincy. That's a huge show of faith, I think, from Dimmer. I also think it's a bit of a sideways message to Matty Rowell too in a lot of ways, because I think many of us would have had Matty as the potential captain. I don't think he's snubbing Matt in the slightest, possibly doing the opposite, putting a bit of heat on him now to look at taking on that second role, as you mentioned, up and attack. We know he takes a great contested mark, doesn't finish off with a lot of goals, but he's a potential player that can almost take a bit of a Nick Holman sort of role there and bob up with 20-25 if he does rest up there and attack. So again, Supercoach friendly style of game. We know he gets a lot of contested footy. We know he farms it out to Noz in particular, farms it off to Flanders. Umpires love him, 25 votes last season as well. So it's a very good all-round game. But yeah, if you're like me and you're prepared to wear a low second round score, then I reckon take both of them, because you are probably going to be getting something like 220 to 240 combined from them most weeks.
Yeah, well, you only have to look at, let's tackle Anderson first. You only have to look at some of these massive scores at home last year. These are just ridiculous. So 122, 129, 155, 151, 149, but in Darwin, but still home game, 150, 140, 132, had an 85, which was a bit massive drop-off, but that was against the Lions, so no surprise there, and then a 122. So just absolute ridiculous form when playing at home. You would expect some of these scores that he's had away bump up, and that's probably the big thing. Like he had a 50, 59, and I think there was quite a few like sort of 70s, 55 as well. So he's had 3 scores in the 50, and as you said, captains just can't be doing that on the road. So even if that bumps up to say 75 as his worst games, and he puts, or maybe even 80 would be the perfect word, but let's just say he has a couple bad ones and then the 75. It's still an extra 60 points on his year just there, which, that's an extra 3 points a game. So you've got this guy here who's only 2% owned, averaged 100 and nearly 107 last year. If he can find 2 or 3 points just on those away games, he's already in that 110. And now you're already talking about in that sort of mix of those top 10 midfielders, apologies. If he is the captain as well, taking a little bit more responsibility, I don't think it's a case of him like some other captains where it's like, I've got to play my role now. I think they're going to need Noah leading from the front and doing everything they can to put them in winning positions. So is there an extra 2 or 3 points there? And that's all it needs, like that, that extra 5-6 points. And we're talking about one of the best midfielders in the game.
The other thing with him too, Swizz, is to bear in mind Gold Coast play a lot of their games late Saturday and Sunday. So that leaves him a perfect option for the captain's loophole. If you can get a decent score on the Friday or Saturday night, roll the vice captain onto that, you might keep it. But if it's not a great score on Friday and Saturday night, you can possibly hold off with that loophole, make him your skipper on, Saturday night, Sunday, and then possibly finish all over the top of, other teams that are only got one or two Suns at most in there.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. And then you got Matty Rowell on the other side of things, the contested beast, one of the best defensive players in the game, loves a tackle. He was up to round 7 last year, was averaging 131. So that fast start we're talking about. There were some big scores the year before early on when he averaged 102 throughout the year. And then even back in 2022 where he kicked off against West Coast with that 157 as well. So here is a guy that usually does come out of the blocks quite well. And the Suns' draw early is very friendly. So outside of that round 2 bye, West Coast at home, the D's who might struggle early, especially depending on what Petrarca's doing. You got Adelaide at home, the North, and then the Tigers at Marvel, which we obviously hate playing at. So there's probably, if you're trying to predict, and it's always going to be hard to predict the ladder this year, but I would feel like all those teams are going to be in the bottom end, at least probably the ones missing the 8. So the Suns could definitely start really strong. And it's going to be Rowell and Anderson leading. And we know Rowell likes to beat up on some of the poorer teams as well. So it would not surprise me that some people be burnt because of what happened in the second half of last year with Matty Rowell. But it wouldn't surprise me if he comes out and goes bang, bang, bang and, is averaging 130 again after sort of 6-7 weeks.
And he's not going to be one of those players that's going to go into a contract year rolling over and playing dead, so to speak. He's going to be going all out to make a point in there. I suspect he knows in the back of his mind which way he's going already. I'll be very surprised if he didn't. I don't think, knowing someone as professional as Matt, and I've spoken to him a few times, I don't think someone as professional as him is going to really wait till the end of the season. He's got a fair idea, and I reckon we're going to see him rolling out all guns blazing quite early in that respect. So, look, if it was me, jump on the pair of them, lock away that 240, plus, wear your round 2 result, and then just keep moving on from there.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about that round 2 result too, because it is best 18, so it is a rookie covering it. And we've got the option here. It's obviously hard because you're going to have your teams locked in, but I've been talking about it in my videos for people who haven't seen it yet about the idea of loopholing rookies. And so if it's even just one of Rowell Anderson, it does at least open up the fact that you've got a player on the bench. It might be a Levi Ashcroft, for example. If he goes well, then you can put Noah Anderson or Matt Rowell on your field. And if he doesn't go well, then you just keep Rowell and Anderson on, or whichever one you might have on your bench, and then you can play another rookie and you're getting 2 bites at the cherry. And realistically, it's not out of the question. We've seen rookies before go up to 100. I think last year was at, I feel like it was Hoare from Melbourne. 1 week was covering people in the defence and went about 120. So, it's not out of the question that rookies can go really well. We do know rookies can put in poor scores, but the fact that it is best 18 and you've got the ability to potentially loophole some players, it couldn't take away some of the damage that could be done by not having one of those guys in round 2. And also, there's some highly owned players that people are rolling in either round 3 or round 4, especially that round 3. So going kind of against the grain, you might take a slight hit in round 2, but then you're going to be ahead of the game for round 3 anyway. There's different ways to play, and I feel like there's no harm in having one, because the big thing that we with the Suns, that early bye is a bit frustrating, but round 14 is actually quite friendly bye in regards to Supercoach. So Collingwood, probably it's only Dacos people are looking like and getting in at some point. Richmond, it's really more rookies. There's not really any premium that's standing out. And then you've got the Swans and the Suns, where the Swans, you're hoping Cal Mills becomes a keeper. Some people are relying Matt Roberts. But outside of that, maybe it's you might need to get Heaney in at some point, or a Goulden, but I'm not really hearing those names being thrown around a lot. So there is room to have one of these one more midfielder to probably join Dacos in there, and a Rowell and Anderson makes a lot of sense.
And we're always so biased about our own team, aren't we? We do tend to look for our own team as our first options. But the more I look through the Suns lineup, there's a lot of players with very low ownership that you can rely upon for very solid scores. Ben Long's a perfect one. Not a huge price. Great tackle pressure inside 50, finishing off with the goals and the contested marking. He's one without even looking. I'd be surprised if he had more than 6 to 7% ownership, but he is going to hold his value throughout the season and quite probably rise in a lot of ways too, particularly if someone like Ben King's having a good year too. That'll take some of the pressure off of Long to he'll be able to crumb up the feet and work with Ainsworth and make a perfect 1-2 up there.
Yeah, and I think the ownership's going to be remarkably low. Like outside, really, if it's only Lombard and Flanders who are 9% and 18%, everybody else is 3% and under. So it is a real point of difference. The one I am watching closely is Ben Jepson, 99k defender. The fact that he's mature age, I feel like they've brought him in for a reason. They've also obviously brought Zach Evans in from the cricket background. I think he was playing over at the Melbourne Renegades at one stage, but he'll be obviously a bit more further back. Of a great athlete, but he's going to obviously have to learn a lot more of those little the footy part of it, where your positioning and strategies and stuff like that. That's going to take some time. But in regards to having a Jepson who already knows that side of footy, it wouldn't surprise me at all that he could fit in. And it could be an absolute bonus for us at 99k. And I'm actually kind of surprised that he's so lonely owned. His ownership at 3%. It's kind of crazy because I feel like that'll go through the roof if he does play in the match sims and pre-seasons. But if not, it's worst case scenario is we get him later in the year and it's a good downgrade option anyway. And we love a 99k downgrade option.
And so the other thing is he's almost a no-risk option early on. If he gets game time, that's a fantastic bonus. If he doesn't, he's someone that you can leave on the bench. He's not going to play. That might be where you get your loophole along the way. If you've got a really good score from your Vice on a Friday night, you can roll him onto the field at 99k. It's worth a swing and a miss with that sort of thing. I think it'd be craziness not to even take him whether he plays or not.
Yeah, well, that's a big point too. Like some people try to avoid the early loophole. A lot of people do like having one, and he could definitely be that player for sure. It's if you're going to do it, you want someone who's at 99k as it is. So, yep. And with the new flex position, it does kind of open up the fact that you can still move him into that position if there was you were trying to get an extra defender in, or so you can kind of play around with some stuff there. But I feel like he's again, it's a reason why they brought him in. He's probably a couple of injuries away from playing a little bit more full time. I feel like it's a low risk option.
If I was going to pick a player that is a high risk option, how we're looking at that lineup, my circle would be firmly around Tuke Miller at the moment. Tuke's been absolutely fantastic, very good Supercoach scores, probably until the last season or thereabouts. But I can just see him slipping back a little in the pecking order now. We probably saw that last year too, where he was sort of dropping off a little bit, 15 to 18 possession games thereabouts, and he's at an extremely awkward price. He's one that if you are going to take him, you're going to want to hope that either Rowell or Anderson aren't playing because they're just going to cannibalise each other with scores, and that's even before you throw Flanders into the mix. So while he's been a very good option for a number of years, I'm putting the pen through Tuke fairly early from a Supercoach perspective anyway.
Mate, I like the fact that you brought that because there's a few people who've been pretty hot on Tuke in regards to his pricing. It was only a couple of years ago he started the year at averaging 115, and then the injuries. I feel like for me it's more the injury concerns now that surround Tuke. But he's still not. It's not like he's an old man compared to some of the other senior players that run around at other clubs. You've got a guy who's been a fantastic leader, still 28 years old. I think people forget that. They feel like he's been around a lot longer. So if he can recapture some of that form and get over the injuries, as a third banana in that midfield, there's no reason why he couldn't at least put more points on his average. I think in regards as a draft smoky, I don't think a lot of people will be looking at Tuke compared to some of the other players around his range. And I'd be more than happy to take more of a punt on him because if he plays more than especially in draft, like he played 18 games last year. So depending on how your draft league set up, you might only need somebody to play 14, 16 games as it is. It's not a whole season thing. So Tuke, at an average of 102, he's a guy who has in the past averaged 120s. It's like, I think we're talking about 20, off the top of my head, 2020 might have been his last massive year. 2021 it was, 124. So it's not even that long ago. Like we're talking, 3 seasons, some injuries and stuff like that. But and we don't expect him to have to do the lion's share. But in saying that, the Suns are going to win more games and they're getting more percentage of the pie. He can be a real smoky for us there.
The only worry I've got with him, Swizz, is I can see Bailey Humphrey getting rolled more through the middle this year, and he is the sort of thing that could take a little bit of Toot's role. Nowhere near as quick as Toot, by the way, but wins a really good contested football and can be swung up forward to kick the goals. One thing Toot's never been great on is the goal kicking. He does get them here and there, but Bailey Humphrey can bob up with one or two snags. So that's my only risk for a player that I absolutely love. I love Toot Miller, and he's been outstanding for our footy club. I'm trying to take off my Gold Coast Suns hat for a minute and put my Supercoach hat on more than anything else. And for me, it's just a little bit of a risk, but I love your reasoning on it.
Yeah, no, I really like Tug. I've always loved him from his days down here as a junior and what he's done for the Suns, and could have easily walked out of that club at any point, and he's stuck down, through thick and thin, and hopefully there's a lot more success coming his way, because he definitely has earned it.
Well, the one thing we'll never forget as a Suns fan, he was the one who eyeballed Tom Lynch when he had told the club he was walking out, and he gave Tom Lynch an absolute baking for that sort of stuff. And for a young kid, really, that he was at the time, that was a sign of an emerging leader.
Yeah. The last one I think we need to also mention is Jared Witts. He's been an absolute warrior in the ruck. A lot of discussion around who the best ruck option is for us this year. Some people still going that sort of Gawn and Cherry option. Some are looking at Nank, going sort of cheaper TDK, where now that Shrek's kind of ruled himself out. People was like, okay, who do I have sort of around there? Now, the problem was last year he only played the 16 games, but he still averaged 108, which made him the sixth best. He was pretty well on average with Tim English. And probably Tim English had a slightly down year, but yeah, Witts, it was kind of a slight down year because he did have a couple of injury-affected games there. But yeah, at his best, there was some absolute monster scores, and we know he's going to take the lion's share of the ruck anyway. And as long as his body sticks around, he's hitting down to a really good midfield. So we get those hit out to advantages. So I think there's somebody that we can't just discount, and especially and maybe if you are going the cheaper option and looking for the value player to somebody to upgrade later on, come around mid-year, if he's still fit and firing, a lot of that weather changes up there, the night games, especially in, say, Darwin, even up there when they played, the odd game in Cairns, and even up in the Gold Coast. So the humidity, it gets slippery. We see a lot of repeat contests, a lot of more balls up, and that gives obviously Witts more opportunity to score in those games. So I feel like he can't be completely discounted by people and just one to monitor.
I can assure you I don't discount him. He's been my number one ruck for about the last 7 seasons or 8 seasons in Supercoach. He's one of the first ones I pick every time because it is such a Supercoach friendly style of game. And again, tends to dominate at home, plays very well in Darwin there as well. So for full disclosure, I've got Cherry and Witts in my ruck at the moment. I've got Harry Boyd sitting on the bench at the moment, mainly because I have seen a lot of him play at SANFL level and I know what he's capable of, but we're not talking about St Kilda at the moment. My only ever concern with Witts is simply age now. He has been an outstanding leader, an outstanding captain. I literally head his fan club, but I know that Father Time is starting to knock on his door a little bit there as well. So we might see that 15, 16 games this year as well, and that's when Ned Boyle comes into the conversation. But if you're prepared to wear that and you've got a very good bench ruck option, Witts is still just about a set and forget.
As we were talking about before too, mate, injury updates, we've got Sam Flanders, a back injury for round 1. So hopefully he'll be back soon. And we'll, we hope for the best there. But he could even be back by round 0, which would be good for the Suns. So maybe it might stretch out to after round 2. But we'll just have to there'll be a wait and see, I think.
They're not going to rush him, that's for certain. You don't hurry up and put board tires on the Rolls Royce. So you make sure you don't rush them back too early in that respect. So if they have to sit till round 2, I've got no doubt they'll sit till round 2 on that one. He's one of those players that you can leave on the bench for a little bit longer anyway and make sure that he's right.
For sure. Well, mate, I think we've covered the Suns in pretty good depth today. I do really appreciate you coming on and giving us your insights, mate. You're obviously a very seasoned campaigner over there in South Australia, especially with the SANFL. So, no, I do appreciate your input today, mate.
Look, Swizz, you've asked 2 of my favourite topics, Supercoach and the Gold Coast Suns. So just for the folks listening at home, this was edited down for about a 7-hour talk at the end of it. So much had to go as we were just talking Gold Coast solidly.
And that's the great thing about these. You get the supporters on who are really keen and want to talk they're passionate about this side. So, no, I do appreciate it, mate, because I feel like this could have gone a very long podcast, but obviously edit it for you guys out there. But no, I do appreciate you coming on and talking those Suns.
My absolute pleasure. Good luck with the season too. I know how nervous those first few rounds are. Hey, I've been playing Supercoach and Dream Team literally since it began back in 1993, back on the age. So settling up for my, I don't know, what is that, 33 seasons? Cripes. I'm still looking to win a league.
I love that, mate. Well, thank you for everybody joining us. Continue to have a look at our team-by-team discussions. We will be covering the match sims and the preseason games as they come up, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Chris. Bye.